Welcome, everyone, to our newest masterclass. My name is Ginger Dean. Today's masterclass, we're going to be covering how to end obsessive thoughts, fantasizing and romanticizing about your ex and potential partners. So we have all been there, right? The breakup happens and we're sad, lonely, hurt, stuck, and confused. We spend what seems like days, weeks, months, and for some of us, years trying to figure out what happened, but we never seem to figure out how exactly to move on from there. So we sit stuck in an endless loop of obsessively replaying the relationship, romanticizing the truth, while fantasizing about what could have been. This masterclass will be a deep dive into helping you understand what it is, why this happens, and how to heal this pattern in your life. Here's what you need to know. Obsessive thoughts, the fantasizing and romanticizing are all about the escape and avoidance of pain. This was an emotional defense developed in childhood in order to disassociate from the trauma we were experiencing at the time. And so obsessing is one of the many ways in which codependency shows up in our lives, especially after a breakup, while we're in a relationship, or when we first meet someone. We tend to obsess and fantasize or even romanticize in an effort to escape emotional pain, whether from the present, past, or what we think may happen in the future. As children, we don't really know how to voice the pain that we're feeling so strongly without words to express ourselves and an adult to listen, comfort, and problem solve for us. So we resort to the world of fantasy. And so children do this in a way to act out their inner worlds, and some of us never left the fantasies that we used in order to get us through the pain. I remember as a child fantasizing about Michael Knight from Knight Rider as the guy who would rescue me from my mother growing up. This started when I was about 12, shortly after my father died. It was my way of spending my days. It was my way out of spending my days crying, depressed, and having to hide from my mother, who handled her grief in ways that terrified me at the time. Now we joke about how women will start fantasizing about the ring, last names, and wedding dresses 2 to 3 dates in when she meets a guy. This is how and why it started. We are already in pain when we meet them, and we set up this fantasy world where he whisks us away from the dreaded single life, where all we do is sit in our loneliness and the messy feelings it conjures up for us. So being in our heads, the daydreaming, stalking, their social media, the ruminating, overthinking, and obsessing keeps us obsessed on the future or the past while we avoid the present day because of the pain associated with it. But what we don't realize is that in our attempt to escape the unpleasant feelings, we create more unpleasant feelings. We replay the past because of the fears we hold in the present, and we will even project the same pain onto the future. This might look like a fear of being alone due to deeper feelings of abandonment and rejection. So maybe the relationship gave you feelings of warmth and acceptance where you felt seen and heard and validated. And this is totally okay to acknowledge this. These are basic human needs. But right now, your brain is locked in a loop of trying to reconcile how to get back to feeling that way again while recognizing the situation is in fact unsafe. Add to that, it is also contending with the desperate avoidance of abandonment and rejection. So going deeper into this, we have to ask ourselves when battling these issues, what exactly am I trying to escape? The answers are usually right in front of us, or they're in our rearview mirror where it's easier to address than we realize. But first, we have to do 3 things in order to get started that will ensure that you stay on this journey, okay? So first, you're going to make the decision that you're done obsessing, fantasizing, and romanticizing your situations, whether with your ex or potential partners, right? This is all about avoidance. And here's the kicker. You may not be ready to do this, right? You may be here listening to this masterclass thinking, oh, I'm so sick and tired of, obsessing about my ex or just romanticizing partners. I'm really ready to be done with this. But in order to get on this path, you have to make a decision. And you have to be honest with yourself about whether or not you're truly ready to ground yourself in your present so that you don't do this anymore. So that's what I need you to do first, is to make the decision that you are truly done with this emotional pattern. The second one is I need you to declare by writing down in a journal, telling a friend that you are done with this issue. I want you to write it out, talk it out, and then I'll take the baton and help you walk this out. But I need you to do this part for me. I need you to declare to a friend or by writing down in your journal that you are done with this pattern. Finally, I want you to truly commit to this process with me. I'm going to give you all the tools that you need, but you must meet me there with your commitment and persistence. We're not doing self-sabotage anymore. Okay. And so in order for us to address this, we need to start with our mindset around the issue, then look deep within our hearts for the emotional work, and then to our body and learning how to physically self-soothe when feeling anxiety and tension around the issues that plague us. So let's look at first our counter commitments to the issue, right? Counter commitments are our unconscious barriers that help sabotage our intended goals. For example, we may say that we're ready to heal after a breakup, but we find every reason not to go to therapy, engage in self-care, or do anything that would otherwise put you on a path towards moving forward. We also know this as resistance or unconscious commitments or covert commitments. So what we're going to do is tap into these barriers by exploring the following journaling prompts. Also keep in mind that these journaling prompts will be inside your masterclass workbooks, but you're free to write them down now. So number 1, how might continuing to romanticize, fantasize, or obsess about this issue serve you? 2, does it keep you from addressing the issues, creating discomfort and distress in your life? 3, does it keep you in an emotionally unavailable headspace and heart space? 4, what truths about yourself and or this person are you avoiding? This all comes down to avoidance of pain and vulnerability. So the vulnerability and self-compassion to admit to yourself that you are hurting and need to redirect that obsessive, ruminating energy to healing your heart of the issues that fuel these ruminating thoughts. There is an abandoned inner child there, desperate for you to see her in ways that you obsess about this person finally seeing you. And I want you to think about that. I'm going to say that again. There is an abandoned inner child desperate for you to see her in the ways that you obsess about this person finally seeing you. By continuing to entertain these self-defeating thoughts, you remain disconnected from exactly what you need in order to resolve, to heal. In most cases, paying attention to the abandonment of your inner child. As we yearn for this person via the ruminations, we abandon our own need to reconnect and go deep within to address the inner girl who is afraid of being alone with her fears and emotional pain, never realizing that the very escape you created conjures up even more pain. You are then by default committed to your own pain. And I'm going to say that again. You are then by default committed to your own pain. As long as you continue to entertain the thoughts that keep you in disconnection, denial, and discomfort, you reinforce the notion that you are not lovable, good enough, and therefore destined to be in this headspace, in heart space. All right. And I want to drive home the point about emotional disconnection from the hard truth. Much of the work that we will do together is around moving away from the wounded, unconscious child to the consciously loving being that we were all meant to be. And it's time that we see the relationship as it was and not what you wanted it to be, right? And so at the heart of this is enduring trauma. We learn to avoid pain in order to keep going. This is a survival mechanism created by your brain because it has one job, and that's to keep you alive. If you're reading this, it has been successful at doing so. Think about all the trauma, abuse, emotional pain, rejection, and abandonment that you've been through in life. Now consider if the acute emotional pain associated with all instances of that pain was at your mind's forefront 24/7. You wouldn't be able to function. And so your brain knows this and it understands the potential for you to be weak and vulnerable. That increases your chance of dying, depression, suicide, making harmful decisions. This is the rabbit hole that it goes down. And so its job is to keep you safe from being in a weak and vulnerable position. So the obsessive thoughts, this maintains a disconnection from the truth, right? You learned throughout your life how to marinate in the denial of the truth, thereby dampening your intuition. As long as you continue to do this, then you don't have to face the truth of the situation because they're often accompanied by really difficult feelings that you've been conditioned to ignore and disconnect from. Okay? So the other part of this is that repetitive compulsion is at play here. So let me define that for you. Repetitive compulsion is a psychological phenomenon in which a person repeats an event or its circumstances over and over again. This includes reenacting the event or putting oneself in situations where the event is likely to happen again in order to replay the unresolved wounds in an effort to master them. This is all done unconsciously and largely unbeknownst to you. Specifically, your most painful, destructive, and or impactful significant life events. If you've been in this masterclass now, you also probably know about the life timeline that I have all of our members do. Okay, and so you can take a look at that in the resources section. The obsessive thoughts, fantasizing and romanticizing, continue to fuel the compulsion to keep repeating old patterns in relationships because we're desperate to master the trauma from the past that keeps repeating itself today, here in the present. And so we might replay the moment in the relationship ended while entertaining the many ways it could have been avoided, or we sit marinating in the pain of the moment because it mirrors the same feelings, perhaps when your father walked out on your mother. Your body can quite literally become addicted to the feelings experienced during traumatic events and get stuck in a loop replaying them via the actual events or mental ruminations. Your body relives the events over and over again, biochemically as if they were happening, since mere thoughts release similar levels of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, adrenaline, and it doesn't know the difference whether or not your relations are present or past. While you're in this state of mind, you're not open for a healthy, loving relationship, as you're still addicted, literally, physiologically addicted and emotionally addicted to the previous relationship while you're doing this. And so this is why it's so important for us to address this emotional pattern in our relationships. These obsessive thoughts also block intimacy because you never see the person as they were, right? Because that's too painful. Right? We're never emotionally fully present or available for another relationship or for a new relationship because your mental and emotional bandwidth only has space for this person and the situation. And future partners may never ever really be able to meet your needs because you're still stuck on ruminations from the past. Okay. So hopefully that gives you some information about what this is and why it happens. Now we want to move into solutions, right? We want to move into how can we start to end this pattern. So what we want to do is here's what we need to know. We also escape into obsessive thoughts when we're experiencing stress in our present lives. I'd love for you to ask yourself the following questions and use them as journal prompts. Then, based on your answers, work towards making the necessary changes. Right now, what's working in your life? What isn't working? What are you missing? What is it that this relationship gave you that you missed out on earlier in life? What were some of the events on replay in the relationship? What were you trying to escape? Where does all the other unconscious overall distress lie, for instance? Are you having trouble with one of your parents? And so because you're not really wanting to deal with the, maybe an issue that you're having at home or just in another relationship, the obsessive thoughts, the ruminating, the fantasizing is an escape from what's going on in your present life. So again, I'm going to ask you, what are you trying to escape? How can you start to resolve all the issues in your current life that create distress and discomfort? When your life feels really good from the inside out, then there's no need to run away from it. And I find that many of my clients get into messy relationships when they're wanting to escape some discomfort or painful life situations. This can include toxic friends, family members, lovers, or a job. It could be money problems. I have to ask also, do you feel safe where you live, right? Some of us don't feel safe where we live. We may be living with family members that abused us. We may be in a living situation that we hate. And so we get into the headspace of daydreaming, fantasizing, romanticizing in order to escape what's going on today in the present. So again, do you feel at ease at home? Is it cluttered? Is it messy? Do you have mail piling up? Are your dishes done? Is your laundry done? I have to ask all these things because they all play a role in you feeling at home and good about your present life. So I'm asking you about practical things. I'm asking you also about emotional issues as well that create discomfort in your life. When we get into a new relationship or we meet someone or when a relationship ends, here's the thing. We will try to escape where we are in the present if we don't like where we are in the present. So this is why that's important. So in continuing the discussion around solutions around this, the first step is going to be grounding and mindfulness, right? Mindfulness means learning how to give the moment to moment attention in the here and now with a non-judgmental attitude, learning to detach from unhelpful thoughts, learning to forgive and be thankful in any circumstance, to accept unconditional positive regard for yourself and others, and to learn new things with excitement and humility. Being mindful teaches you to pause and remain connected to the present moment, right? So I want you to think about this, how you're going to ground yourself in the present moment and allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. You've lived a life marinating in denial and avoidance of them, and this is how you've coped. Often when we become stressed, angry, anxious, depressed, or any, really strong emotion, we found it really difficult to remain present with ourselves. And so we get stuck in what this relationship could look like, what might happen in the future, what's happened to me in the past. And so once we ground ourselves, we're able to be more fully present in terms of what's going on now, and we can make really good choices about self-care and self-soothing. Okay. And so this is why it's important to practice mindfulness in your healing journey. Now, what does mindfulness look like in the moment? Real quickly, when the ruminating starts, I want you to literally stop and quickly reaffirm to yourself, detach. I am loved and I can never abandon myself, because that's what you're actually trying to do in that moment. You're trying to abandon the discomfort, the distress, or the pain that you may be feeling. Saying out loud or just saying to yourself the term or the word detach literally starts to help your brain detach from the merry-go-round that it's on. Okay, because again, the start of the ruminating thoughts is the beginning of the escape. Right? You're ruminating obsessive thoughts that begin with the thoughts of the past or what was or what could have been. Again, it's because you're trying to escape what's going on now in the present. And you may not even know what's causing you to kick into this headspace of yours, because you're probably not aware of it. But the next time it happens, I want you to pay attention to what was going on in your body, what was going on in your mind, where were you, what were you doing at the time? And sometimes also you need to know, we've been doing this for so long that it becomes almost automatic. It's a behavioral issue. When I've worked with, for example, bariatric patients in the past, if we went from 17 McGriddles down to 1, it would literally mean that we would have to examine the routine of getting up early in the morning, going to McDonald's, having enough time to place the order, wait for the order, and then go to work, right? And so behaviorally, they were used to that actual process, that actual ritual is what I'll call it. And so when they weren't doing that anymore, it became behaviorally, they would actually come into my office and tell me, hey, I actually ended up in front of McDonald's this morning. And I sat there like, wait, I don't actually want a McGriddle anymore. So why am I here? It's behaviorally because that was their ritual. Behaviorally, they were used to doing that. And so even though she no longer had the cravings for, 17 McGriddles in the mornings, behaviorally, she was used to showing up there at, 6:45, 7 o'clock, so that she'd be able to place the order, have them make the order, and then get to work on time. So I want you to also be compassionate with yourself, be gentle with yourself if you slip back into this pattern, just because you're going to have moments where you slip back into it. You may even have moments where you realize, oh my God, I've been spending the last 30 minutes still thinking about this situation. This will take time. It's not overnight magic. Be just really compassionate with yourself and just be really gentle in terms of the expectations that you have right now. Okay, so the next solution that we're going to be looking into, which I have been talking about, is journaling and/or microjournaling. The first step I want you to do is journal or write down in your phone. The phone's note app is a brain dump of all the thoughts that you have about the situation. I want you to give yourself a time limit of 10 minutes and then get on with your day, because these moments will happen. So if you're thinking about you're replaying what happened the actual day that you broke up, do a microjournal about that. Do 3 to 5 sentences about what happened, why it happened, and what you're thinking about it. Get all the thoughts out. That's what you need to do. Because what I want you to do is acknowledge them, as they're here to teach you and show you the parts of you that are still wounded. If you're still stuck on the moment that you were abandoned, then we know that you have an abandonment wound there that you need to address. Okay. So journaling about these feelings literally helps rewire your thoughts and the feelings about this because your thoughts shape the feelings that you have, which then govern the actions that you take and give you the results that you're experiencing today. How you think about your life shapes the lens through which you experience it. And so I'm going to say that again. What I just described to you was TFAR, thoughts impact your feelings, which then govern the actions that you take and give you the results that you have. Okay. So as you process through your thoughts via journaling, you are shifting your thoughts, which allows everything related to your feelings and the actions taken and the results that you have to follow along like a domino. All right. So be patient with yourself, and you will eventually jump off this merry-go-round of negative ruminating thoughts. All right. So this stuff trips everyone up on this road to recovery. All right. So understanding how to win this battle will be key to healing. The next step in all of this is what I call what's generally known as the downward spiral exercise. I've also included a copy of this in your masterclass workbook, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to use this. Obsessive and ruminating thoughts give us clues into the deeply held core beliefs about ourselves. The downward spiral exercise gives us incredible insight into the beliefs that drive our obsessive thoughts. These core beliefs give rise to the obsessive thoughts, which produce more negative thoughts and feelings, because it really isn't about the ruminating thought, right? As you go down the chart, you'll start to see that it's not about the surface thought that you're actually thinking about. It's actually more about 6 stages down, the core belief that it's really lurking in the back of your mind. Okay. So again, you're going to see the blank template inside your workbook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a separate video about that. Let's move on to your body, because again, in your work with me, you're going to find that I tend to address things from your mindset, your heart work, and then also body work. We have to include all three in order to resolve these issues that we tend to experience after relational trauma. So I want you to now start to think about what's up with your general anxiety level. All right. Trauma forces us to stuff our feelings down and ignore them and pretend they aren't there, while taking on more trauma in order to cope. So it's really easy to ignore our feelings and pretend that they aren't there, because they continue to build and influence your daily thoughts, actions, and behavior. Right? So here's the thing, daily actions. Your brain needs evidence that life as it is right now in the present can be happy without the escape of obsessive thinking. I want you to hear that again. Your brain needs evidence that life as it is right now in the present can be happy without the escape of obsessive thoughts, fantasizing, and romanticizing. Again, earlier I talked about your life right now not feeling safe, comfortable, or you may be feeling some level of emotional distress, for example. And so in learning how to solve these issues, what we're doing is we're letting your brain know it's okay for us to remain in the present. It's okay for us to remain present when we're in a relationship and not romanticize about the future, because we're so afraid of what happened in the past happening again in the present. And so in engaging in the following, you create evidence that it needs. Once you start to clear the distress and ease the tension in your body, then you'll find yourself doing this less and less. But you've got to be intentional about this, and you cannot have a perfectionistic mindset around this. Your body and brain have become intentional in helping you escape the pain of the situation by doing this. And now you are literally taking the wheel and making a 180-degree turn. Right? Throughout your day, I want you to start doing what we call a body scan. And I'm going to include some information on this in your workbook. I want you just to start scanning your body from head to toe. We call this also progressive relaxation. I want you to just scan from the tip of your toes when you're laying down, really relaxed, from the tip of your toes to the balls of your feet, your calf muscles, your thigh muscles, your pelvic area, your abdominal muscles, your chest area, your biceps, your neck muscles, your shoulder muscles, your neck, and then up to the top of your head. I want you to scan every inch of your body for tension. Right? Because when we're experiencing emotional distress, this affects how we think, how we feel emotionally and physically. And so we're so tempted to all the time ignore the anxiety and distress and even the sad thoughts that we're having in our bodies. And so what we don't realize is that this is the jumping off point into obsessive thoughts, right? For some of us, this might mean if I'm feeling anxious about something that happened at work, I may go start romanticizing about that new guy that I met last weekend, and our wedding and our wedding pictures and our kids and things like that, right? And so I want you to pause and listen to what your body is telling you. I want you to stop abandoning your body whenever you get into distress. I want you to stop abandoning the pain, whether it's physically, whether you're abandoning yourself because of the anxiety, or you're abandoning yourself because of the sad thoughts that you're having about something from the past or something that's going on today in the present. Okay? Your self-soothing plan, right? Because your self-care routine in all of this, plus your self-soothing plan, includes results in you practicing more self-love. Your self-soothing plan is designed to help you rewire what's going on in your body, because right now you're in a little bit of distress when you're doing this. And so your nervous system has been essentially wired to this person to the degree of emotional connection or closeness, regardless of whether or not it was mutual. The pain you feel is very real, and I don't want you to let anyone else tell you otherwise. And this is why it feels so awful when you're going through a breakup or when you're done with a breakup. This is why self-soothing is so important, because at one time you were co-regulating with this person. You guys were, when you were with this person, you felt good together. And now that person's gone. And so your nervous system's like, oh, what are we going to do? We can't do this anymore. And what it wants is to escape into moments when you're with that person, which is why you keep obsessing about them. All right. So what you're experiencing is a new normal, and that can be jarring to not only your nervous system, but to your sense of self. For most, this means rediscovering parts of you that you never knew existed, let alone needed healing. And so you may now find that you've lost yourself in a relationship, and it'll feel like it's too hard and like you want to give up. Anxiety sets in, and this makes you feel, in some cases, less panic. Well, it makes you feel more panic about the perceived loss of love, affection, and attention. And so the anxiety just now starts to wear you down after a while. And it's like, that's where depression can set in, because they both follow each other like cats and dogs. And so some of you may feel like, well, I feel depression sometimes, I feel anxiety other times, and sometimes it just runs all together. And so the tips here may help you self-soothe as you run through what it feels like to be on this roller coaster of emotions. I want you to allow yourself to feel all of them. Give yourself time and space to heal. Don't forget, the block and delete buttons are your friends right now. If you are in a situation where you cannot be on social media with them, block and delete, because you need boundaries while you heal and focus on yourself. All right, so here's some suggestions. You can go for a run. You can start working out, jumping jacks. There's you take a staycation or a weekend trip. Take a mental health day from work if you need to. Allow yourself to cry and feel all the feelings. You can also take a hot bath with scented candles to ease your anxiety and tension. You can even join a new meetup on meetup.com, which is a group where people can meet each other and sort of join in together in order to engage in a new hobby. You can call a friend to talk, vent, and ask for, but first I want you to ask for permission before you do that. Just don't call them up and just start dumping on them. Another thing you can do is cook your favorite meal. You can order out. I want you to consider volunteering in your community to take your mind off things. Again, journaling, that's another thing. Creating a brain dump of all the obsessive things all the obsessive thoughts that you're having. All right. I want you to journal about current feelings about the breakup. And then I also want you to journal about the best version of yourself and how this person would respond to the situation. All right. Write a letter to your ex about the reasons, the healthy ones, why the relationship would not work. Okay. Again, grounding, all these things serve to keep you grounded in the present and focused on what's going on in your life right now. Breath work is another one. This is called 4 square breathing. You can find there are tons of examples of this on YouTube. So if you go onto YouTube and look up 4 square breathing, this is really, really helpful whenever we're in a really anxious or panic body space or heart space. All right. So another tip is the Calm app. The Calm app is an app that has a breathing bubble in it, which I love because it can actually help you with 4 square breathing. It means that you sit still, you're breathing in for 4, you're holding it for 4, and you're breathing out for 4, and then you're doing that repeatedly over and over again. So look up 4 square breathing on YouTube, and that will definitely be able to help you calm down whenever you are feeling anxious, you're in distress, or you're just feeling generally overwhelmed. Okay, so This brings the video portion of our masterclass to an end. I hope you find it helpful. I will have a separate video for the downward spiral exercise, and you will also find in your masterclass workbook all the journal prompts that we discussed here, as well as other exercises, including your healing practice that you're going to be putting together in order to tackle this issue on a daily and weekly basis in your life. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for listening.